School. Find us online at KosherTorah.com. Hag Urim Sameach. Happy Hanukkah to everybody coming. Be'ezrat Hashem. It is the final night of the Hanukkah holiday. And Be'ezrat Hashem, we are here live to talk and discuss about different questions that people have. And I'm waiting to see what's going to be popping up here. I hope I have all my calculations, everything here all right here. But anyway, let me start with something that's actually rather important, which is a topic which apparently is a very, very relevant and controversial issue today. I got this as an email request to discuss, and that is the topic of vaccinations. There seems to be a very big issue with regards to vaccinations. What's the story with that? Well, let me tell you something. I know that there are a lot of people in certain elements of the religious world who are very anti-vaccine. My ex was actually very anti-vaccine when our son was young. And it required of me personally to do the research to find out exactly what was going on with the vaccinations. Well, the situation pretty much was this. There was some question with regards to one specific multiple vaccination, which had a curious connection with an amount of autism that happened with those who had that vaccination. All the tests that were made seem to have been proven negative, and there does not seem to have been any connection with that vaccine with any other. And there does not seem to be any problems with any other vaccination. So therefore, without any valid, verified medical proof to verify any kind of problem with vaccinations, I have to look at this from a Torah point of view, where it says, Shomer shomeret nafshotechem, you shall certainly guard your soul, and look at the vaccinations or any other type of preventative type of a medication to be a miracle and a godsend. And essentially, therefore, vaccinations can help save lives. And by all means, from our Torah point of view, not only are they advisable, they are essential, they are required. And therefore, I'm a very, very big supporter of vaccinations and the like. So if you have any questions or any comments, that's what we're here for. This is your question and answer time together for us to sit and chat. This is a very popular forum that we began on YouTube last week, and people requested that we have it here on Facebook this week. So again, for all those of you who are joining us now, if you got your questions, type them in the text. I got my good old reading glasses on so I can actually read your texts, and we'll continue to chat. But anyway, getting back to issues of things like vaccinations and the like, there seems to be some kind of paranoia, conspiracy-minded people out there who believe there is a spook under every rock and like a ghost in every closet. When you try to think about that type of mentality, it's a never-ending struggle, a never-ending battle trying to fight ghosts and shadows, simply because you can never prove anything to anybody about anything. There are people, this very day, they're absolutely convinced that the earth is flat, that we've never been to the moon, that everything is a conspiracy theory. All right? This type of talk is very, very unsettling, unstable. It is not the way of Torah. That is not the proper way of wisdom. Are there things going on in the world that are definitely secret and concealed from us? Absolutely. Do our governments keep secrets from us? All the time. Are there things going on that we don't know about? Well, obviously. All right. I've shared this with, the ancient alien crowd, that of course our government knows things that we don't know. Of course, they're involved with things that we're not privy to. I mean, since when is this, news? This has always been the case. This wasn't just the case with the United States government or modern other governments, Western or Eastern or whatever. I mean, back in the day, whether it was with biblical Israel and Judah, whether it was with Babylon or Persia, whether it was with Greece or Rome, everybody had intelligence organizations. Everybody had secret government stuff. You had secrets in religion. That's no secret. The Egyptians had secret religions. The Greeks had secret religions. We Jews have kept the secrets of prophecy secret, since biblical times, dating back, 3,500 years, right? And yet some of those traditions, we still have to this day. So yeah, there are secrets. What's so revelatory about that? And yet when you look towards what secrets actually are, I hear background noise. But anyway, when you want to talk about what secrets really are, all right, that's discovery. But a point, especially that we make in the Kabbalistic circles, is that what we call the world of teshuvah, which means return, or is supposed to be related to that which we call in Kabbalah the Sefirat Binah, or the realm of the mind, intellect. Anytime in every way you want to believe something's going on, something, subject it to rational scrutiny. Understand and seek to investigate rationally and intellectually what's going on. I hear all kinds of stories about contrails in the sky. Is there something going on with that? Maybe there is. Is the government trying to dominate us and stuff like that? Well, think about it. What's the purpose? Especially from a Christian point of view, there seems to be the idea, the concept and the belief that there is a new world order coming, a one world government. Okay. What do they want to do? They want to kill us all. Do they really? Do they need a one world government in order to kill us all? I'm sure you've seen movies like The Terminator, in which you had the artificial intelligence programs like Skynet. Actually, there's a real Skynet out there. You should look that up. Well, if you had an AI program and it was dedicated to destroy humanity, it could easily, mess with all of the computer circuitry that controls nuclear weapons and blow us all up. Okay, adios, Wiedersehen, right? Au revoir, done. You go to Gan Eden and that's it, done. But apparently, thank God, since World War II, which ended in 1945, for those of you who don't remember, we have not yet had a World War III. So we've been going pretty good for over 70 years. That looks pretty good to me. Are there wars? There are wars all over the place, right? It's always been like that. Go do your history. I don't think there's ever been an actual period in the history of humanity when we've actually never had wars. So for those people who think that, a sign of the coming of the Mashiach is that there'll be wars and rumors of wars, which is, I believe, an echo or a quote from the Christian Bible. Well, we've always had that. I mean, pick any date, any year, any time in history, and somehow, somewhere, there was a conflict somewhere in the world. So what? That's unfortunately the terrible side of human nature. So I am not a big one to believe in conspiracy theories. There are a lot of things going on in this world. Like I said, there are a lot of secrets going on. I myself, I'll give an example. Many years ago, many years ago, I once went to Nevada, and I went all the way up to Extraterrestrial Highway, got as close to Area 51 as you're legally allowed to get. And I stayed there for a while and I saw some really weird stuff. But I'm not willing to say that what I saw was anything extraterrestrial. Probably was just some government stuff going on. And that's cool. I don't have a problem with that. And if our governments actually are in touch with extraterrestrial civilizations, well, what's the big deal? I remember reading some report from some source. I don't remember if it was from a university or a government-sponsored report, in which it was believed that if and when you ever had a disclosure of actual alien presence on Earth, it could be so disruptive that it could literally unravel the foundations of human civilization as we know it. And therefore, such connections was considered to be the highest, protocol to be kept quiet. Well, that actually I can believe. Can you imagine if we actually found out that all the, in quote, angels and or demons of the Bible have always been just extraterrestrial visitors, maybe from other dimensions, higher sources of races and the like? I wrote about this in my book, Aliens, Angels, and Demons. It's exactly what the whole purpose of the book was all about, to associate the connection between that which we believe religiously and that which we're discovering scientifically, and that they're not two separate and or opposite realities, but really one and the same. So in that respect, it's a matter of having to deal with stuff. I remember, this is actually an interesting one I read about recently, in which people believe that the moon landing was somehow faked, fabricated, simply because they could see that when they planted the flag, it seemed to be waving like a breeze or something like that. Now, everyone was always under the impression that the moon has no atmosphere, but apparently it does. I've been reading in modern scientific journals that there is a very faint atmosphere on the moon, which could very well have sent a breeze, which could have sent some type of flag waving. We all thought that the moon was a dead planet. I believe, to the best of what I've read, that there's clearly frozen water on the moon, and I believe that some believe that somewhere under the surface there might even be liquid water. I don't know. So there's all kinds of things. Why we don't know about these things, honestly, probably because most people don't care. I think more people are more concerned about what their latest pop singer is saying on Twitter or something like that than anything else in the reality of the more important things in the world. So what am I going to say? People want to be entertained. They want to believe in the oohs and the ahs of crazy things going on in the world. And as long as that's the case, well, what can I say? And people are going to believe kind of dumb and crazy things. So anyway, as long as that's what's going on, people are going to believe whatever they want to believe. And unless they have a real foundation of education and things, they're liable to believe anything and everything. And that's when things can get dangerous. Today, the issue is, for example, like I began, vaccinations. Well, of course, vaccinations, they're bad, they're evil. The government's putting stuff in there because they want to control your minds, they want to kill the children, they want to do all this other kind of stuff. Yeah, the government. Who the heck is this government? Right? Take a look at what's going on in, for example, the American government. You think the American government's doing anything? Between what's going on between Republicans and Democrats and the pretty much political constipation going on in Washington, I'm surprised that the government's able to do anything, all the more so maintain any kind of actual conspiracy. But of course, that itself is a conspiracy. That's a cover-up itself. Yeah, the whole concept of the political divide. Oh yeah, it's also a conspiracy. Yeah, everything is a conspiracy. I mean, it gets ridiculous. This is why we have to focus with intelligence, binah, to try to get to a true understanding of what's happening in the world. Okay? So please, when it comes to understanding anything, just be grounded, be realistic. If you want to be suspicious that there's stuff going on, Kosha. But still, with a lack of evidence, please don't take any jumps into insanity and craziness, because that's where problems arise. All right? All the people today, everybody's believing that all kinds of crazy stuff, right? The Jews are doing this, and the Mormons are doing that, and the Freemasons are behind this, and the Illuminati is doing that, and the Russians, and the Americans, and the Israelis, and the this one, and the that one. Yeah. Oh, come on, right? Oh, by the way, Mashiach is coming tomorrow at 3 o'clock, right? Because that's what so-and-so said. How many times have we heard prophecies the Mashiach is coming? On and on and on. Oh, my goodness, I've heard so many times. Mashiach is coming. It's the end of days. This is happening. I'll give an example. Many times I'm invited on to Israeli radio programs to discuss the relationship of modern day events with biblical prophecy. And I always tell them in the phone interview, there is no relationship. There's nothing going on. I mean, gosh, I know you don't want to believe me, but as much as what you think that this is going to lead to that and that's going to lead to this, I'm hearing that for years and years and years. I remember when I was living in Jerusalem back in the 1980s, a rabbi once said to me, it was absolutely guaranteed by this time next year, Russian troops would be marching down the streets of Jerusalem. Yeah, well, guess what? It didn't happen. And over and over and over again, it didn't happen. I remember a couple of years back, I was somewhere on social media, I don't remember where, somewhere in texting. One rabbi said to me that he was absolutely convinced that by this time next year, some Mashiach or something, Gog and Magog war was going to happen. And that he was so convinced that he bet his son a brand new bicycle that it definitely would happen. And I told him, yeah, well, he better start saving up for the bicycle. I remember back in 2012. Remember 2012? The world was going to come to an end. What was the Mayan calendar stuff? I started in 2010, 2 years before that, trying to tell people that was a bunch of baloney. It wasn't going to happen. And, well, here we are in 2018, the end of 2018, B'Shah Tovah, we're still here. So again, part of kosher Torah is being rational and grounded and down to earth. The greatest and highest levels of Kabbalah, mysticism, is to bring heaven down to earth, which means to bring the greatest and sublime understandings of heaven down to a rational, realistic application. That's what I endeavor to do here. So ultimately, in all the private classes, I teach a whole bunch of private classes in our KosherTorah school here. And what I teach our students, of course, is bottom line. You're going to read the Etz Chaim, you're going to read Amul Lafia, you're going to read all these deep Kabbalah stuff. But it's not enough that you just translate the words. You got to understand actually what their authors meant. You got to go, we call from the mashal to the nimshal, the example to what it really means. That's what we endeavor to teach here. So ultimately, people have understanding. That's why we call this kosher Torah. And again, this is very, very vital. Privileged to posting this class. I posted a recent photo of me and our new Rabbanit, Elisheva, from the Alien Con that we went to last month. And we're working right now to integrate her into our teachings and our studies here. She's off camera right here to the side, listening attentively. She's probably embarrassed in mentioning her, but hey, what can I say? Anyway, she just feels a little shy. She's from France, she's from Paris. And, she's a little shy with her English. I think her English is spectacular. You can still 8% better than my French, which is non-existent. But Be'ezrat Hashem, B'Shah Tovah, as the year progresses, we're bringing her in to offer a woman's point of view, again, which brings profound insights into many things that, I sit and I ask her questions. And I'll tell you something, the Rabbanit is a generation younger than I. And as such, brings such profound insights and wisdom to things. I'm sitting back there, I'm saying, gee whiz, I am this old dog and I actually am learning new tricks. So I'm hoping to bring to you the best of many worlds. And Be'ezrat Hashem, especially for our KosherTorah student body, that's what's coming up. But all righty, enough with our introduction. Let's go into some questions here. I got a question from Tuvi. He's asking a deep question. He states here that the Ba here links the Teli with Ze'er Anpin, saying his head is a treasure of fine gold, his locks hang black like a raven. Is this significant with relation to the Nachash being related to Mashiach? Well, I've taught about the Teli in many places. I think I'm the only one. Is anybody else talking about the Teli online? All right. First of all, the Teli, they are mentioned first in the Sefer Yetzirah. That says there in the 6th chapter that the Teli in the world are like a king on its throne, indicating that they're the bosses. The word Teli means actually, like a dragon. Actually, that's actually what one of the words for Hebrew to be dragons. So essentially, the Teli are said to be the dragon angels, if you will. Well, the dragon angels, you might know from the book of Isaiah by a different name. They were called Serafim. Now, people read the book of Isaiah. Remember his famous vision. He goes into the temple and he sees, a place filled with smoke, and he sees the angels saying, "Holy, holy, holy." Well, people misunderstand. They mistranslate the word Serafim as being Sorefim, meaning fiery or burning ones. No, it's from the word Seraph, not Soref. Little vowel makes all the difference there. Soref means fire burning one. Seraph is a reptilian, a nachash, serpent, a dragon. So he saw these dragon entities, and they were serving in the temple saying, "Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh, holy, holy, holy is Hashem." Now, who are these Serafim? Well, we also know them by another name. Okay? Now, whenever you're dealing with Malachim, most rabbis have no actual exposure or experience, and therefore they're speaking theoretically. And they're reading from books and trying to, cross-reference sources as having any experience like those in the prophetic school have. Well, the Serafim are also known by a different name. We know from other sources as well as experience that these are the ones referred to in the book of Daniel, chapter 4, as being the Watchers. They're the ones whose job it is to look after the human race. From what I've been able to call from a number of different sources, apparently the Teli might have actually been at one time indigenous to our Earth. Yeah, it's kind of really weird. But when you go into certain points of teaching about the pre-Adamic civilizations, and we know that there were pre-Adamites who were humanoid, and our physical form as Homo sapiens is a combination of our original spiritual sources, Adamic beings of light, with the Homo sapien beings of flesh. But even prior to that, there very well might have been other races on this earth that evolved. And it's very possible that the reptilian race evolved here on earth and eventually inherited their Olam Haba, which makes them Malachim in service of Hashem. Now, you might think that's kind of weird, but it's not. Because if you read Midrashim, what is there for the merit of the tzaddikim, our tzaddikim in this lifetime, in the Olam Haba? It says very clearly in the Midrash that we are to inherit Shai Olamot, inherit 310 worlds. Now, some will interpret that midrashically, metaphorically, symbolically, but it's very possible from one interpretation that's rather literal, that essentially it says that the righteous are going to be given the name of Hashem. Now, for those of you familiar with angelology, there is a certain group of malachim who have the name Yud Ke Vav Ke in their names. They are part of the Yud Ke Vav Ke. They represent Yud Ke Vav Ke. They represent what we call the Malach Hashem, the angel of the Lord. Now, we still think in this very primitive way of everything being like separate entities, kind of like us people. I mean, that's a very almost idolatrous way of looking at things because we're dealing with a much greater nebulous reality which we think is so divided really isn't. So essentially, whenever you're dealing with, angels who have the name of Hashem, they represent Hashem. They're individuals, but they have the name of Hashem. And it is said that the tzaddikim, the righteous of this world and the world to come, are going to be like that. That we're all going to have the name of Yud Ke Vav Ke attached to us, apparently just like these malachim. So maybe if that is our future, maybe the malachim today who have the name Yud Ke Vav Ke had a previous past like our own. And maybe that is where these Serafim came from, who we call the Watchers, who we know as the Serafim. So someone is saying, is there a significant relation to the Nachash being related to Mashiach? All right, Nachash means serpent, and Mashiach, of course, Messiah. And the numerical value of the two names is curiously the same, 358. So many people have asked, what is the relationship of the serpent to Mashiach? Well, we know the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Remember that old bad guy? Apparently, he was reptilian humanoid. Sages say that he stood erect and had arms and legs, and that he spoke. All right? When was the last time you saw a standing snake with arms and legs who spoke to you? Well, if that doesn't describe what we today call a reptilian, so it gives you kind of insights into who this Nachash of the garden was. Now, he was evil, he was the devil, he was all this and that. Yeah, maybe, maybe not, whatever, all kinds of different stories of what that was and how it meant. But we also know a very profound secret. Unlike in the Christian tradition, in which they view the world as being a duality, right? It's God and the devil duking it out and fighting for your soul. You're going to heaven, you're going to hell. Well, that's an unknown teaching in Judaism. We don't have any concepts of eternal salvation or eternal damnation. Indeed, there's nothing to be saved from in the Jewish tradition. We don't have a concept of salvation. We don't have a concept of original sin. No one is detached from, distant from God. You don't need an atonement for anything. These are Christian concepts, interpretations of our Judaism that we've never embraced, we've never shared. And of course, Christians will say, yeah, well, you stupid Jews haven't understood your own Bible and religion for 1,500 years, or 2,000 or however many. Okay, I guess we're dumb and stupid. What can I do? Veil of Moses is on our eyes. That's what most devout Christians will say. I don't argue with my brother and sister Christians. They're free to believe whatever they want. And if they think I'm going to hell, well, okay. You know what I tell them? I say, you know what? I wake up every morning, and even before Modeh Ani, which is our traditional beginning prayer, I always have either the words about my mouth or the thought in my mind. I say, Ribono Shel Olam, Master, thank you for waking me up today. I pray that whatever it is today, I may serve you and I can do what's right in your eyes. And you know what? If I get to the afterlife and God says to me, you know what? I'm sending you to hell for eternity because you didn't believe in the Christian religion or the Muslim religion or this or that. You know what? I'm going to turn to God and say, Ribono Shel Olam. Every day when I was on earth, I sought to serve you. And every day in the afterlife, I'm going to continue to do the same thing. You want me to go to hell? Well, I'm going to tell you I'm going to serve you in hell too. What can I do? And that's the way I live. That's the way I look at things. Right? So if God says to me, you know, yeah, I'm sending you to hell because I want you to burn. I say, Ribono Shel Olam, just tell me how hot you want me to burn. I'll stoke the flames. That's what you want. That's what service is all about. And some people might think that's crazy or silly, but I think such ideas are crazy and silly. So I don't want to fight with any of my Christian brothers and sisters about, you know, ideas and beliefs, but it gets down to the point that we don't have that duality like they do. That who we call the Satan is a servant of Hashem, right? Just like it says in the book of Job. All of evil is created by God and it serves it in God's service. Our choice is to repel evil from inside us. In all due respect, God created arsenic, but I don't think he wants us to include it in our daily diet, right? God created all kinds of poisons in the world, and we're not supposed to ingest them just because they're there. Evil exists in the world. That doesn't mean it's supposed to be part and parcel of our life just because it can be. The heart of B'chaim, choose life. This is what it's all about. So good and evil exist. Two sides of the same coin. Mashiach and Nachash, two sides of the same coin. I've discussed this in other classes as well. The Rabbi Todros Abulafia writes in his Otzar HaKavod that Metatron and Samakel are, you know, like Jacob and Esau. They're like the twins, light and dark. But God created both light and dark, good and evil, Isaiah 45:7. So ultimately, there is a great and profound secret with regards to the coming of Mashiach, the raising up of evil, and how everything is ultimately going to come together. And we're going to recognize that somehow, in some way, everything is still all united in one, the unity of things. And I think that's the most important lesson of them all. I even recently had a dream, and I don't remember all the details other than the words that I heard in my ear, or my mind, whatever, when I woke up saying, don't focus on consciousness, focus on unity. And I said, yep, I get that. Unity. All of us recognizing how we all have to somehow, some way overcome all the differences and recognize to seek the unity which unites us. Because united we stand, or divided we fall. So, who are the Teli? Zerampin. Zerampin is small face of God. You can call it the world of Yetzirah, the world of Metatron. And of course, the Metatron are said to be related to the Teli, the Watchers. So all of these symbolic metaphors are overlapping interconnections with one another, and essentially to point to us a higher reality which exists, in which we integrate and we live on a daily basis. Yeah, there are higher entities. They do watch over us. They are the shepherds, the guides, the magids. And essentially, we don't subserviate to them, but they communicate with us, like we learn from the Bible, telepathically. And they influence our minds, either when we're awake or when we're asleep, but one way or another, their influence we can sense, we can feel. Part of our prophetic traditions, of course, is to cultivate awarenesses and expansion of consciousness, to be sensitive to their presence, and as such, can fine-tune and listen in more clearly to the communications. That's what it means, communing with an angel, communing with a magid. Yeah, this is what we do. And hopefully, with the grace of God, we learn, we recognize the power of that, which again we call unity, and endeavor to seek to teach it, educate, enlighten people for the sake of, well, breaking down the walls that divide us. Hey, united we stand. That's coming to Mashiach. All righty, let's move on to Elizabeth's question here. She says, in the light of the possibility of extraterrestrial beings influencing our history, what do you think about Jewish history? Now that's interesting, because if you take a look at Jewish history, extraterrestrials, well, let's look at something as simple should I say, the Exodus from Egypt. In a few months, we will again celebrate Passover. And Passover had some pretty cool miracles there, the plagues and everything else. And I've seen a number of programs that they've made modern to try to explain the 10 plagues scientifically. Well, if any of those hypotheses have validity, then yeah, it would mean a whole bunch of stuff had to happen, in quote, coincidentally, for everything to fall into place. Now, this is the big interesting thing, right? The big miracle, obviously, of Passover is the parting of the Red Sea. I don't know how many of you have ever seen the old 1950s Cecil B. DeMille version of, Moses and the Ten Commandments. Great. To me, it's one of the greatest comedies. I love seeing Charlton Heston play Moses, right? I think he was playing against Anne Bancroft, who I believe was originally his girlfriend and then became the wife of Pharaoh. And Yul Brynner played Pharaoh. So Anne Bancroft and Pharaoh, they're all the same age. They, the other characters, they also did the same age. And Moses, he ages 50 years. I love it. Beard grows long and everything else. I mean, I think it's a comedy. It's just one of the fun versions of the Ten Commandments, which surprisingly has a lot of actual Judaism in it, much more than any of the more recent versions that have come out, which I find so ridiculous. But long story short, if you ever see the scene, I'm sure it must be on YouTube, where they show the parting of the Red Sea, right? They just show, the waters just go, I think it must have been some reverse motion, just go, and the waters are gone. And you go, wow, that's pretty cool. Okay, great, but that's not what the Torah teaches. The Torah teaches that a hurricane-force gale wind blew against the water and forced it to part. Is that really a miracle? You can have a tornado-force wind, which can blow against water and literally suck it out and make it dry. That's not necessarily supernatural. But how coincidental is it that that exact force which was needed happened right at the moment when Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, were with their backs to the water with the Egyptian army against them? Now that was a miracle. Not so much the wind, but the timing. So you see, these are the way things really happen. So in that respect, Who sent the wind? Well, God sent the wind. Yeah, but if you remember, Oseh Malachav Rohot says in the Bible that God makes the angels like winds. So the winds that blew were actually angels. Rambam brings down a point that every single force of nature is actually a malach, a messenger of God. Now, every force of nature obviously is acting out the divine will, the divine plan, but the implication is that these forces of nature are intelligent, sentient, conscious in and of themselves. And they actually have a soul to them, just like we do in our bodies. That's pretty radical, especially for Rambam. But you'll find when you study the Rambam and what I consider to be one of the best works of Torah, which is the Moreh Nebuchim, the Guide to the Perplexed, you will find that the Rambam embraced many ideas, philosophical and otherwise, which are also equally embraced by the Kabbalists. So you can draw the conclusion, well, Maimonides was then a Kabbalist, eh? Well, I don't think he held by Zoharic teachings or anything of the kind, but you will find the similarity between the two schools of foundational teachings. And Rambam clearly was aware of what we call the prophetic Kabbalah, because his teachings, especially in the Hilchot Yesodei Torah, the foundations, the foundational laws of Torah, which again, I have a course on our KosherTorah school for those of you who want to learn this. It's all based on the same principles that the Kabbalah was based on. And you see clearly, page by page, of what he wrote. So ultimately, yeah, are, in quote, extraterrestrials involved in human history? But of course. Are they involved with Jewish history? Equally, but of course. And where do I get my biblical authority for that? I don't know, Daniel 4:14, which said the Watchers, remember those angel guys again? Yeah, they're doing things by the hand of God. And their authority or their involvement didn't start in the days of Babylon, when Daniel wrote about it. They've been around since the beginning. And that's what they do. And they're still around to this day. And wouldn't it be really interesting if our governments actually had made contact with them and knew that they were real and that they might have been some of these extraterrestrial contacts that have been going on clandestinely for a long time? Now, can you imagine if that was what our government was actually covering up? And that those entities who we know as shadim, demons, were also entities that our government had become aware of and had made contact with? Yeah, that would spook out a lot of people, wouldn't it? Maybe those types of things best be kept quiet. So you hear all kinds of stories, all right? The famous Eisenhower stories when he went on and made the alleged agreement with the ETs, supposedly not with the good guys, but with the bad guys. You got all these stories out there, all right? It reminds me of one of my best science fiction TV dramas, which is Babylon 5, which is presently at this time being replayed on the Comet TV. So if any of you get like YouTube TV, it's on the Comet channel. The story of Babylon 5, 5-year arc, very profound stories written by J. Michael Straczynski, where in which you have the entire universe is duking it out between these two ancient alien races, which in the film is called the Vorlons and the Shadows. And what do you know? It turns out that the Vorlons on every single planet have always been experienced as what we today call angels. And the shadows are always experienced as the demons. So here it is in the space opera, the great war between the angels and the demons and humanity in the middle. And ultimately, the finale is that both these, in quote, angels and demons who've been influencing us for all this time, it's their job to leave our universe or our galaxy or whatever, and go off to wherever they got to go, la la land for them, and for us to take responsibility for ourselves and our own future. And that's such a profound point for a TV drama to make, because that's exactly what our Kabbalistic message is about the coming of Mashiach, where ultimately, as the Ariel explains in the Drushim of Purim, that the whole purpose of exile is for humanity to learn not to rely on heaven, but to take the power of heaven in our own hands and be responsible for ourselves to grow and mature to become spiritual adults. And that requires of us meditation, psychology, transformation of personality, behavior, and actions, and to take responsibility for ourselves rather than blame it on the angels and the demons. So this is Elizabeth's question is, extraterrestrials in charge? Well, I've never known an angel to be a terrestrial, so I guess it's extraterrestrial, and they're doing their job, but their job is to, if you will, kick us in the butt, to keep us moving as a race, to take responsibility for ourselves. So whenever we have terrible, questions like, how does God allow the Holocaust? God turns around and says, it's not me who allowed it. Why do you allow it? And that's the more appropriate question. We are the ones who mess up our own lives by our own choices. And we can't be blaming God. Many of you might remember him, dating myself, the old comedian Flip Wilson. He used to play a character, and he always used to say, oh, the devil made me do it. Lord. The devil doesn't make you do anything. The only devil's inside your mind and inside your heart. But you think, all right, goes and drives you nuts. I always tell people, whenever you're running away with crazy thoughts, shuv lamakom, like it says in the Sefer Yetzirah. Go back to the silence of Yud-Ke Vav-Ke. Go back to the silence of God and look at things rationally and analytically. That's what, if you will, the Watchers want us to learn to do. That's what we call spiritual maturity. That's their job, to get us all to grow up. That's their involvement. That's what it's all about. And the greater we do that, the better it is for us. Someone's making a reference here to Greek, about Yeshu's statements being wise as serpents. Yeah, serpents are always considered to be wise. It's a symbolic reference as being, like wise like a serpent. But ultimately, again, it's a metaphor, but that just means to be smart. It does not mean to be devious, harmful, or negative in any way. So let's go on. In Star Trek lingo, Yehud Hashem is the prime directive. Well, I don't know about that. The Star Wars prime directive, Star Trek, was not to get involved. Let everything direct as it was. Well, that does not seem to be the angelic thing. The angelic thing is very much to be very much involved. So what can I say about that? I mean, we're all connected. Just because our conscious minds are not aware of the greater universe around us does not mean it does not exist. For those of you who are watching this video, you see I have behind me a closed door. Do you think the universe does not exist simply because I have a door closed and I'm not aware of what's going on out there? Do you think like the boogeyman's out there or Sasquatch is out there, going into my refrigerator and chomping down on what's left over from Shabbat? I don't think so. But there's a real world out there. And just because I don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. So we close our eyes and cultivate the experience of expanding consciousness. We become sensitive to and aware of greater realities. And that's, again, especially in our KosherTorah school, we endeavor to teach. Why? Because if you cannot see with your own eyes, remember we talked about just moments ago, spiritual growth, maturity, and all that. We call it mochin de gadlut, right? Spiritual brains, adulthood. How do you get there? What's it all about? It's about you learning to experience for yourselves. Unlike many of my peers, I don't want to tell you what to believe. I don't want to read to you a book and say, this is what we believe and you believe it. Follow the leader. No. I believe the ultimate message of Torah, like it says in Baba Metzia, the very famous discussion or argument between Rabbi Yehoshua and Rabbi Eliezer. Many of you familiar with this very famous story? I'll repeat it just real quick. There was an argument in the yeshiva between Rabbi Yehoshua and the majority of the sages and Rabbi Eliezer. The question is with regard to a certain type of an oven, whether or not it could be kosher or not. Technically speaking, it was kosher. But there were elements of its identity which made the sages concerned that if they permitted the use of this type of thing, that it could be a stumbling block to people who would confuse it with a forbidden type and therefore be blurry issues. And people could, end up using something wrong. And therefore they said, let's play it safe and keep that stuff forbidden. But Rabbi Eliezer refused to acquiesce. Said, no, that is permitted, and I'm not willing to forbid under any circumstances. And Rabbi Yeshua said, look, got to go with, what we, the majority, say. Rabbi Eliezer says, no, I refuse. And I call upon the forces of nature itself to prove that I'm right. And the Gemara says all kinds of weird stuff started to happen. There was a river flowing outside the yeshiva, it flowed backwards, right? The walls of the yeshiva started to shake. And even a voice from heaven spoke and said, why are you guys arguing with Rabbi Eliezer when you know he's right? So, if the voice of heaven speaks, well, what does Rabbi Yehoshua, who's in charge, say? All right, heaven, I surrender to you, whatever you say, because you're the boss. Not a chance. Rabbi Yehoshua stands up in honor of what we call the Bat Kol, the voice from heaven, and he quotes the Torah, and he states, Lo b'shamayim hi. The Torah is not in heaven. When it comes to an understanding of halacha, how we observe Torah practice here on earth, it's not subject to prophecy, revelation. It's subject to the decision of the rabbis, because we're the ones who have to live in this world with the realistic responsibility of human beings every day. It doesn't matter what heaven has to say. We have to deal with the reality here. So we get to choose, because that is what the Bible teaches. We decide the law because that is what the Bible teaches. All throughout the book of Deuteronomy. Pretty much Rabbi Yehoshua just told heaven to mind its own business. Story continues and states that after this, one of the sages who was there at that time encountered Elijah the prophet, famous for the Navi. And he says, hey, what was Hashem thinking when Rabbi Yehoshua pretty much told him, beat it, buzz off? You would think God says, I'm going to throw my lightning bolt down at them. No, it says Hashem laughed and said, Benin nitzahuni, my sons have defeated me. In other words, God laughed and said, yep, that's my boy. That's what I want from them, to take responsibility for themselves. Just like the Ariel taught about the mochin going into nok, as opposed to zah, meaning we have a benefit in this time of exile because the human intellect rules. And that's such a profound teaching here about our responsibility of importance. So please take these things to mind. We are to be free, even free from the limitations of what we think is the authorities of heaven. So even if the angels from heaven start to reveal to us stuff, we don't follow what angels say. We follow what God says. We follow God's word. We don't have any new prophecies. We don't need. We need to understand the old before we can ever go move on. And that is where we're at today. And that is what we do today. So that, God be willing, is our goals and stuff. Alrighty, let's move on to our next little chat here. Someone is speaking about hair. The Zohar sees every strand of hair as a harboring entire universe. One of the most profound sections of the Zohar, known as the Rambam commentary on this. Okay, let me just tell you something about the Zohar. First of all, to be as iconoclastic and sorry to offend, I do not believe the Zohar had any historical connection whatsoever with Shimon Bar Yochai. I think that is entirely midrashic in nature, and I think there's enough evidence that would validate that clearly. But with that being said, the Zohar still has tremendous spiritual value. Rabbi Yosef Karo, who of course did believe that the Zohar was the legitimate work of Shimon Bar Yochai, he held it to be the most important book, especially in Halakha, second only to the Talmud itself. But you need to understand the Zohar, or otherwise you're always going to confuse what it teaches. Opa, I just had a little blank there for a second. Don't know what that was all about. But anyway, getting back to the point about the Zohar. The Zohar uses a highly difficult language of symbolisms that speak symbolically of different, in quote, faces of God each having eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and even hair. All of this, these symbolic names of an Adam Kadmon, the primordial man, an Atik Kadesha, the ancient holy one, Arich Anpin, long face, Ze'er Anpin, short face. All of these are symbolic representations of experiences of the divine from a human point of view. And that's the most important thing we need to understand. These are called in Lurianic terms partsufim. And a partsuf as a sephirotic face means that which we see from the outside looking in. All right? We're the outside. We don't see God for what God truly is. No one can ever do that. But we can experience God in different ways and at different levels. And as such, each level, each way is described as a mask of God. And those are the ones that are described. So when the Zohar speaks of a certain, in quote, mask of God having hair which emanates down, the head usually is said to be the place of concealment, where in which the supernal thought, the will, is generated. But it's inside the head using human symbolisms. And then it refers to the hair as being the revelations of the will of God. And that each one is, in quote, a universe. Is it a physical universe, like in a multiverse concept, or as an idea, a belief, a point of view, a direction in life? These are called the Se'arot, and each one is said to be light. And Chaim Vital states that usually Se'arot of the Rosh is a level too high and sublime for us to deal with in most cases. So we don't try to understand the will of God, the will, Keter, because who knows why God ordains what God ordains. Can we ever understand the mind of God? I'm trying to first understand the will of God, meaning what does God want from us? And if I can understand that by performing the proper and right actions in this world, by being a decent, moral, and good human being, for me, that's enough. For everyone else, well, what can I say? So again, if and when you want to study Zohar, I studied Zohar when I was a teenager. It so inspired me, maybe to be the rabbi that I am today. So I guess it's pretty good. And I still study Zohar, of course, through the Lurianic system, and I still find it high and sublime, regardless of whoever wrote it. It's still revelation. It's still revelatory. It still has great and profound value. But please, never, ever, 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 ever take the Zohar or Lurianic symbolisms to be literal. So whenever we're talking about hair and faces and things like this, are all symbolisms. And if you miss that, you're always going to miss the point of what the Zohar Kabbalah is all about. All right, let's move up what Kirk says. Kirk is asking, can I clear up the eternal salvation plan that Christianity says has the exclusive on? Well, that's exactly right, Kirk. Christians teach, and I don't think it's a surprise to anyone, that unless you believe in Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior in the specific context of the theology of a specific church, then you are obviously evil and deceived by Satan, and you're going to spend eternity in hell. Now, that's not just evangelical Christians here in the United States who believe that. It's been the pretty much message of all Christians throughout the history of the church. And it's interesting how you will have individual churches or denominations that are ready to cast entire other denominations into hell for not being true Christians. What do you think Baptists believe about Catholics? Or for that matter, Catholics believe about Baptists. Should we throw in Jehovah's Witnesses into the batch? How about Mormons? All right, Adventists. Every group's got their own this and their own that, because Christianity is based upon the foundation of proper doctrine, proper belief. Now, down here in the South, I'm broadcasting the last time from my old house here in Tennessee. Every church, we got churches on every corner. And you will have churches say, yeah, the person's over that church, they're deceived by Satan. They're all going to hell. Well, that's the way some people believe. In Judaism, we don't have such beliefs. We're not concerned so much about your beliefs. We don't have a catechism or doctrines of faith Even the 13 principles of Maimonides are not so much etched in stone. You read commentaries on them, and you'll find that they're not always believed by everybody for everything. So ultimately, Judaism is all about doing what's right. Christianity is about believing what's right. And they believe that if you don't believe like them, you're going to hell. So all Jews are going to hell. All Muslims are going to hell. Hindus and Buddhists, everyone else. And I've often asked Christians, well, what about, you say, if you don't believe in Jesus, everyone's going to hell. What about all the people like the Native Americans and Chinese and Hindus who all died for hundreds of generations after Christ, historically, who never ever had the opportunity to ever hear the gospel? They're all going to hell. I've actually heard Christians say, well, yeah, I guess they think that's God's justice. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't describe to those beliefs, but what can I say? I think if people look at things again a little bit more rationally, they might find that there are some holes, if you will, in their theology which need to be addressed. And again, it's not my point to critique the beliefs of others. People believe whatever the heck they want. But again, my focus is unity, building bridges, not burning them. So I don't want to offend or insult anybody, God forbid. Whereas at the same time, I'm not willing to condemn everybody here to going to hell because of this or that belief. All righty, Torah view on natural immunity versus vaccines. I already discussed that one. I began the class with that one. I'm very, very much, again, for vaccines. I believe it is actually, in my opinion, Torah obligation to have vaccines, and all such beliefs that there is some kind of spiritual, conspiracy theory behind them, I think is nonsense. So I'm definitely not one of those, in quote, anti-vaccine people. All right, let's move on here. We're running really short of time. Prime directive, it wasn't during equivalency. Okay, fine. Blah, 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 blah. Greatest gift anyone can be given is the chance to express themselves. That's true. All right, I got a question many times. Years ago, Jonathan writes, had a short out-of-body experience. It was preceded by electrical-like vibrations throughout my body. Time to time, especially during Shabbat, I nap, I get these same vibrations. If I should let the vibrations continue, explore the state. All right, a lot of people enter actually into trances. Some people call it sleep paralysis, where in which you have all kinds of weird experiences and the like. If you are completely intimidated and afraid of these things, then yeah, you should back out. But if you visualize God's name, Yud Ke Vav Ke, and you use that as an anchor for meditation, righteousness, focus, and all that stuff, you can get through these experiences unscathed, unharmed. And again, it's a matter of overcoming fear. And that's always the big, big problem. Whenever a person wants to have a spiritual experience, somehow, somewhere, the experience of that greater world, going through the darkness into the tunnel and all that other stuff, it's pretty spooky, because it means going into an experience of reality far beyond that which we've ever known before. So ultimately, yeah, if you can have the courage to do it, you'll find that there is benefit there. I know many of my peers might say, all that kind of stuff is avodah zarah. It's all evil. It's all idolatry. Okay, please. Psychology is not avodah zarah. Expanding consciousness is not avodah zarah, meaning idolatry. None of that is idolatry. Doesn't fit the criteria of definition. And all those people who want to huff and puff and speak against spiritual growth, calling it idolatry, I'm sorry. There's no validation to any of that, in spite of whatever books that they want to quote and sources that they want to say. Because ultimately, when you recognize that pretty much everything is psychology, then you don't look at all of these superficials as having any validity. Everything is just a symbolic representation of deeper things. You recognize that, and I think we're on our steps towards a better world. All right, let's move along. Zane is asking the question, I heard that in the future only Purim and Hanukkah will be observed, not the other Hagim. This is true at about Zechariah 14:9. Well, it doesn't say the holidays. The Ariel says that in the future all the books of the Bible will be no more except the book of Esther. Now, what that means is pretty much a concept we've already discussed, that the teaching of the book of Esther If you remember, never is the name of God mentioned there. And the reason and purpose of that is to indicate to us that the ultimate power of salvation, if you will, in this physical world, is all in our hands. We have the power to do great things. Rather than sit on our rears and wait for God to act, God's waiting for us to act. That was the whole message of spiritual growth, maturity. Remember the story of Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, again, bringing the moching down to Nok, and the lessons about Purim and the Shar Kavanot. We have an entire series on the Etz Chaim. For those of you, again, who are coming supporting students of our KosherTorah school, you'll have access to this stuff. So, $50 a month, come and join and learn. So, yeah, in that respect, it's only the book of Esther, because that's the book that speaks about human character development. Everything else, history. But that's a history of the past. So, in quote, when Mashiach comes, that which will be celebrated is our human accomplishments. No, not that we have pride, but God has pride in us. Because when we talk about having the image of God within us, what that actually means, growing up, maturing, like I said, being rational, being intellectual, taking responsibility of ourselves, that's becoming like God. That's really what it all boils down to. All right? So ultimately, this is what we all need to understand. If you ever want to study the Kabbalah, if you can't bring it down to earth and understand it as the realistic day-to-day lessons of what it's all supposed to be, then you're missing the point of what it's all about. So, grounded, that's the message, that's the lesson, that's the teaching. All right, let's move on. Toby asks a question. Tanakh says prophecy will return. Actually, no, it doesn't. The rabbis say that. At the end of age. That's Rambam who says that. How does this occur without an established school of prophets? Well, actually, the established school has never ceased to exist, but the established teachings still exist. When you recognize that prophecy is actually an expanded state of human consciousness, and it's not subject to book learning, it's subject to human growth, human psychological growth. So Rambam writes clearly in Moreh Nebuchim. He understood. Well, that's how come we can have prophets again today. Remember, Rambam writes again, you can have a prophet, meaning someone who talks to God and God talks to them. But when God talks to an individual today, it's for the sake and purpose of individual and personal revelation, as opposed to having a message for the nations. So in that respect, if someone says to me, the Lord spoke to me and told me to tell you, or you, the nation, that we don't listen to. But if God says something to me personally, that's when I listen. And you say, well, how do I know that? Well, again, that's we cultivate certain practices. That which you call Ruach HaKodesh, divine inspiration, spirit of prophecy. I have courses. Go to my front page, KosherTorah.com. Go scroll down to the meditation courses there. Those courses are available for you. They're ready right now. Boom. All you got to do is purchase the course, and you download the links, and you have everything that you need. From Shara Kedusha, from the Bahir, from Masechet Atzilut. All these books I teach. I don't know if anyone else is teaching this stuff. And it's all practical and relevant. Go read the course outlines, the syllabi that's online. See for yourselves. You want to learn the opportunities in your hands now. And then the wise words of the great sage Hillel, Zil, Gamar, go and do it. You know where that's from? Very famous story. A convert came to the school of Shammai and Hillel. And they said to Hillel first, said to Shammai first, hey, I want to learn the entire Torah on the time I can stand myself standing on one foot. Shammai looked at the guy like he's an idiot. And, says, get out of here. The guy goes to Hillel. He says, all right, Hillel, again, I want to learn all the Torah in the time I can stand on one foot. Hillel then gives him the original version of what we call today the Golden Rule. What you yourself don't like, don't do to somebody else. He says that's the entire Torah and the prophets. Sums it up all in that one little thing. Zil Gemara. Go and do it now. You can do that, you'll be all right. And that really is what the Torah is. Bottom line, to be a rational, decent, moral, God-fearing human being. That's what the spirit of prophecy requires. And then we practice forms of psychological transformation, psychological introversion, psychological exploration. All of this is meditation, hitbonenut, hitbodedut, all of which I cover in my courses. For those of you who want more details, take a course. That's why it's there. All right, final question from Tuvia. Were you expecting this level of questions? I don't mind. Like I said, the questions are open for everyone. Any question, nothing. These are the good stuff, right? People believe whatever they want. And, people can ask whatever they want. All right, somebody's saying here that they're a Christian, but they don't believe in organized religion. Well, that's cool because, something, people have all kinds of ideas and beliefs. And usually an organized religion pretty much by definition means this is what we believe to be right and everyone else technically is wrong. I don't like that kind of divisions and strife. Something, you can believe whatever you want. You can, go whatever direction you want. I don't care. I care about what you do. I care how you are as a decent human being. In that respect, I don't care what your religion is, what your race is, what your color is, your sexual orientation, you're this or you're that. I don't care what kind of a decent human being you are. I think that's what God wants of us. Everything else might be confusion in the mind, mistakes of the intellect, as it's called. And something, we'll deal with it on an individual basis. Ultimately, I pray truth will come about. All right, Boris is asking, we'd like to hear my view why people won't follow truth, can follow or see true path. There's only one true one way. There's only one true divine way, Boris. Boris is telling me there's one true divine way. Well, yeah, that's exactly what Christians say, and that's actually what certain Jewish people say, and that's actually what the Muslims say. Everybody says it's my way or the highway. That's exactly what the problem is. So no, Boris, I disagree with you. I'm not sure there's only one true divine way. That's not what our halakha teaches at all. For those of us who are Torah observant Jews, and we live by the halakha, Jewish law, there's no one right halakha more than anyone else. On the contrary, there might be 100 different ways. Sephardi, Ashkenazi, Yemenite, Polish, you have all different views. How much time do we wait between meat and dairy? God be willing, when we get back to Pennsylvania, I'm going to be starting, I pray, a regular class in the laws of kashrut for our KosherTorah school student body. We're going to learn all these things, all the practices, and realize it's not just one way. There are multiple ways. And as we say, Elu ve'elu, divrei Elohim chaim. These and these are the ways of God. So ultimately, when we learn respect, tolerance, and understanding, this is the way of the Torah. Okay? Whenever you want to understand the way of Torah, darkei noam udivrei shalom, pleasant ways, words of peace. I see all the times people fighting and arguing at a personal level, professional level, whatever. Everyone's so willing to condemn the other, but they're not willing to understand the other. Something, you can't call yourself a ben or a bat Torah if you're not willing to lend what we call kavzechut, give the benefit of the doubt to people. We give people all the time second chance, third chances, everything that halakha allows us to give, we give. But we care about people. We give a damn about people. We want to help people, Lamana Hashem. Isn't that what life is supposed to be? We're not going to condemn people. We're not going to kick them out. We don't fire people. Remember, like Donald Trump, our president, and what was his old TV show? Said, you're fired. We don't do that. All right? You're never fired. Now, granted, some people do certain behaviors that, they have to suffer the consequences of. But we still treat them with respect of human beings, even so. Kachazeh. So ultimately, I'm sorry, Boris, I don't think there's just one true divine way. There are many. And I will extend it. Remember the famous verse from the book of Malachi, rising of the sun, going down thereof. Great is God's name amongst the nations. The Gemara says, Rashi says, whenever even an idol worshiper is offering idolatry and on an altar of idol worship, if they're doing it in the devotion of their hearts to the creator of the universe, God accepts it from them. Really? That's what the Gemara says. Those are our sages, and if we're Torah Jews and we live by what our sages say, So yeah, we show respect. We show tolerance. That's what it's all about. Boris again asks, can average people experience other body experiences? I think you might mean out-of-body experiences. Yeah. Again, go to my courses. You guys ask questions, and I can tell you. Questions as, how many languages do I speak? I sometimes wonder that myself. I think I speak English, pretty good in Hebrew, Aramaic. I really, really need to learn French. Absolutely. All right. And all due respect to my rabbinite, she's not tough enough on me. She should be beating me with a stick, speaking me only in French, telling me if I want to eat. She told me in French or I'll starve. But she's kind and gracious to me. So yeah, I got to learn French. I got to learn Spanish. So much to do. All right. Do I have any insights, Nathan is asking, on the bell sound heard around the world recently? Well, no, I don't, because simply I never heard that bell sound. Are there sounds and stuff going on in the world? I'm sure there are. Like I said, there's a lot of weird stuff going on in the world. I don't know what it all means. Something's going on. Is there something supernatural and or extraterrestrial? Maybe. I don't know. I guess we'll find out when the time comes. But no, I can't say what it's all about because I didn't hear anything myself. But there are a lot of weird things going on. So someone is also, like Kirk is asking, do I really understand the infinite in any stretch of the imagination? How can we, finite, understand the infinite? That was the big issue. Actually, I'm going to teach this in a course probably tomorrow to our KosherTorah school body from the Etz Chaim that asks the great question that was originally asked by Greek philosophers. How can the ultimate creator, who is so opposite and distant and removed from creation, have any relationship to creation? How do we have that attachment and connection? Question that the Rambam also asks. We deal with God in what we would call the Ein Sof, ultimate nothing. How does nothing become something? Great questions. These are things that we contemplate in the Hit Bonenut form of meditation and ultimately have insights and revelations, the greatest of which, of course, we have is the writings of Chaim Vital. That's, of course, what we learn. So, okay. Yeah, the infinite's a pretty tough thing to understand. So we do the best we can with what we've got. And Debbie says, what about people, family members who continue to do evil deeds? Well, let me just comment on that. We all have family members who may or may not meet our doctrinal standards, who may not live to our level of religiosity. It happens many times, for example, that you have modern Orthodox families, say, for example, here in the United States, who will then send their children to Israel, who then become indoctrinated in the ultra-Orthodox yeshiva educational system, who will then return to their parents' house and declare to their parents that their kosher is not sufficiently strict for their newfound beliefs. So all their lives they were able to eat in their parents' house, and now all of a sudden they can't. Now, that kind of thing, in my opinion, is ridiculous. I don't call that evil deeds. But let's say we actually have family members who are evil. Let's say we have family members who, God forbid, abuse drugs, alcohol, or other types of behaviors or substances that lead to terrifying and bad behaviors. Surmera. Sometimes you have to separate from people who are harmful to you. If someone is not a blessing and a benefit in your life, doesn't matter who and what they are, it is a mitzvah, a good thing to do, to separate from them. Bottom line, why should you expose yourself to harmful influences? Sometimes some people just don't get along. I always go by the saying, better peace from afar than war up close. If two people can't live together in peace, then you know something, then live apart, but stay in peace. That's how it is. And when some people are doing you harm, you got to separate from them. You can't allow that to continue. First, you got to toughen up, to not allow yourself to be influenced or affected by their negativity. And if necessary, physically separate from them. Sometimes we have parents, siblings, children who act in just negative, harmful ways that, just got to say, all right, you know what? We can't really have a relationship because you're toxic. Do me a favor, you over there, me over here, and Shalom Yisrael, as we say. If that's what has to be, that's what has to be. I prefer to make peace. I love for everybody to get along, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. So what can I do? Alrighty, guys. So look, we've covered everything tonight. We've gone for an hour and 15. I thank you all for that. Again, it's the final night of Hanukkah, time to shine light, to believe in light, that light inside ourselves. Let's make a difference in the world. I think that's the most important thing. You have the power. So let's do something with it. Isn't that the best lesson of them all? I'm your host, Ariel Tzadok. Thank you for listening, and I thank you for our time together. Kem and KosherTorah.com. Check out our website. We have a whole bunch of courses for you. Consider becoming a supporting member of our student body. Have access to the live classes. Have access to me, right? My student body. When they have questions, you call me up. And that's how we get along. So anyway, guys, thanks for being here. God's blessings. Hag Urim Sameach. It's already the second of the month. Otherwise, I wish you a Rosh Chodesh. But anyway, take care. I'll see you all soon. We'll have our live classes for our regular student body, and we'll be posting stuff. We have on our YouTube channel, ongoing class in the book Etz Chaim. Come join us on YouTube for the live class on Wednesday evenings. And we'll be back here on Facebook. We'll do stuff from time to time. Alrighty, guys. Ariel Tzadok from the Kosher Torah School. I'll see you online at KosherTorah.com, YouTube, everything else. You need to contact me, Ariel Tzadok, gmail.com. Take care. We'll see you all soon. Shalom.